In the closest he's come yet to a concession, President Trump says if Joe Biden is certified the election winner by the Electoral College, he will leave the White House. Here's what President Trump had to say to reporters yesterday when asked about whether he would go.
Certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that. But I think that there will be a lot of things happening between now and the 20th of January. A lot of things. It's going to be a very hard thing to concede, because we know there was massive fraud. So as to whether or not I can get this apparatus moving this quickly, because time isn't on our side, everything else is on our side, facts are on our side. This was a massive fraud. This should never take place in this country. We're like a third world country.
Who better to weigh in on this than our Washington This Week panel? Andrew Cohen is a columnist with Postmedia News covering Washington, and Anita McBride is former chief of staff to Laura Bush and executive in residence at American University School of Public Affairs. Hello, and a special happy Thanksgiving to you, Anita. Great to see you on this long holiday weekend in the U.S.
Thank you, Marcia, and hello, Andrew.
Andrew, President Trump says he will leave office if Biden wins the Electoral College. This is almost being treated as though President Trump has a choice.
Well, you know, there are people who thought that the only way Donald Trump would leave is if the Metropolitan Police of the District of Columbia came to the Oval Office on the morning of January 20th and escorted him out. But we're pleased to hear now, Marcia, in the continuing education of Donald Trump, that he now says if indeed the electors vote, I believe it's December 14th, when the Electoral College casts its votes, that indeed if they vote and the Electoral College goes for Joe Biden, which it will because Joe Biden has 306 electoral votes, the same number that Donald Trump received in 2016, that he says now he'll go. So that is reassuring. And I think what we've seen over the last 3 weeks is gradually the extraordinary force of reality descending upon Donald Trump, particularly as he sees Joe Biden create his administration. The last week, of course, the most important thing is the General Services Administration has allowed Joe Biden to begin formally the transition. And I think with that and the relentless announcements of cabinet and the new administration and the failure of now over 30 lawsuits, Donald Trump will soon see that resistance is fruitless. It's done. Joe Biden will be inaugurated on January 20th.
Anita, is it damaging to democracy, to the Republican Party, to the president's legacy to behave this way and not just come out and say, yes, I was defeated and I wish Joe Biden and his team the best?
You know, you raise an important question because most incumbent presidents, when they leave office, whether it's 4 or 8 years, do measure a part of their legacy on how they have handled the transition. They're custodians of an institution, and it shouldn't be personal. And so what we've witnessed, you know, here in these last few weeks is a transition within a transition. Donald Trump is, in a very public way, is going through his own personal transition that as much as he wants to fight it and is entitled to fight things that he felt were irregularities, that he lost. And that's not a word that's in his vocabulary. So he'll have to you know, most post-presidents go on to a fairly fruitful and productive post-White House life. It will be interesting to see, though, how Donald Trump uses this when he does leave. And I agree with Andrew, he will leave. I don't think it will require the Metropolitan Police, thankfully, but he will leave. And what will he do? Will he continue to battle that this election was taken from him rather than ride off into the sunset for a little bit?
Well, Anita, is that part of the story that he's trying to construct here in case he does run again in 2024?
Well, I've thought about that, and I don't know. And I would say to a degree, the answer to that is yes. And maybe not necessarily that he may run, but he certainly has a number of people who have voted for him, who are going to continue to listen to him. They're going to support, you know, candidates who he helped bring in on his coattails to a certain degree. So what role he plays politically, whether for himself or others, remains to be seen. But I think I talked to a congresswoman here, a Republican congresswoman who won her reelection, feels Donald Trump's influence on the Republican Party will be very long lasting.
Andrew, what do you think about that?
Donald Trump will try and marshal and husband his political power as long as he can. And the way to do that is to raise money, which he now is. It's supposed to be going to his defense fund, but there is, if you look at the fine print, the money can be used for other purposes. He will use his authority through the midterms in 2022, when traditionally the president's party, so Joe Biden's Democrats, will do less well than the Republicans, although we'll see. And I think that he'll freeze the field, which will not make people like Mike Pence very comfortable or very loyal. But I think what he'll try and do is play kingmaker, spoiler, as long as he possibly can. I don't think he'll run in 2024. Who knows where he'll be legally at that time? I mean, there is reason to believe that he could end up in court at the state level, even if he pardons himself. So I think he'll try and preserve that, and Republicans are worried about that, worried about his hold, his cult-like stature in the Republican Party, and where that may lead the Republican Party.
And then, Anita, we have President-elect Joe Biden out there. I think he must be a cucumber because he is so cool. I just, where he gets this from, I do not know, but he is acting, he is going to be president, so presidential, and doesn't seem to be disturbed by anything that's going on.
Of course not.
Any of the noise around him.
No.
I am wondering about that and what it would mean on Inauguration Day if Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump are not there.
Well, listen, to answer your question, where does he get it from? He gets it from being in Washington and in public service for 47 years. He is cool. He's a cucumber. He also brings, with him into this role, which obviously he's marshaled very quickly, and the appointments and the announcements, a total understanding of how Washington and the apparatus of the federal government works. So there's a certain confidence in that. You're not coming in as an outsider with a bit of the chaos that swirled around, Donald Trump, more than a bit. So, it's a return. Everybody, is talking about a return to normalcy. Well, in a large extent it is. It's also, bringing back people who have had enormous amounts of experience. That's both good and bad, but it's very helpful, obviously, for Joe Biden. And I don't know, Inauguration Day, that will be, if Donald Trump and Mrs. Trump are not there, then that's more of a reflection on them than it is certainly of how the country handles a transition on Inauguration Day.
Andrew, final thought to you this morning about the challenges ahead for the next 7 or so weeks for Joe Biden.
The challenges are immense. I keep thinking of Franklin Roosevelt, who won election in a landslide in 1932. And in those days, the transition was not 2 months, it was 4 or 5, because the president wasn't inaugurated till March. And in that time, Franklin Roosevelt created the architecture of what would be the New Deal. And within 100 days of arriving in March, I think March 2nd of 1933, he passed some 14 laws and remade America. Joe Biden won't get that opportunity because he is very unlikely to have a Senate. Even if he does have the Senate, it will be by so narrow a margin as to be not terribly productive. But what can happen between now and then is, as Anita has just said, somebody who's been a master in Washington, who knows everybody, who doesn't have to have on-the-job training. You could not ask for a more experienced president than President-elect Joe Biden. And with that, there will be an administration in place which will, I think in its early days, what it can't get through the House and the Senate, it will get through on executive order. He will know exactly what he's doing on day one. Expect to see a blizzard of executive orders, many of them reversing some of what the Biden administration will call the most egregious policies on the environment, on the Paris Accord, even Iran, the nuclear accord, whatever they can possibly do.
Yeah. Lovely to see you both on this Friday morning. Thank you so much for your time, Andrew Cohen and Anita McBride. We'll see you again soon.
Have a good weekend.